Okay, so most of us probably think we know the story. You know, in the beginning. But what if I told you that the Bible's opening pages don't have just one creation story, but two? And what if they're completely different, maybe even contradictory? Well, they're hiding in plain sight. Let's take a look.
I mean, it's the question, isn't it? How did all of this get here? Every culture, all across history, has its own powerful stories that try to answer this. It's a question that gets right to the very heart of who we think we are.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting. The Bible, it turns out, doesn't just give you one simple answer. Right there, in the very first book, Genesis, it gives you two. And they are just surprisingly different from each other. It's one of those things that once you see it, you can't unsee it.
All right, so let's actually do this. Let's put these two stories right next to each other. The first one is in Genesis chapter 1. The second one kicks off in chapter 2. Think of it like looking at two paintings of the exact same landscape, but by two totally different artists with different styles.
So, the first story, wow, it starts out in this massive cosmic watery chaos. It feels huge and majestic. God just speaks, and entire worlds come into being. The language itself is so rhythmic and ordered, unfolding over those famous 7 days. It's like a grand cosmic poem.
But then you flip the page, and bam! The whole scene just changes. That watery chaos is gone. Now we're in a dry, dusty, empty desert just waiting for something to happen. It feels so much more grounded, earthy. God isn't just a distant voice anymore. He's more like a craftsman about to get his hands dirty. And when you actually lay them out like this, the differences are, well, they're not subtle. Just look at the order of creation. In Genesis 1, it's plants, then animals, and then humanity. Man and woman created together as the big finale. But in Genesis 2, the whole thing is flipped on its head. Man is created first, all alone, then God plants a garden, then brings the animals to see if they'll be good companions, and only then, finally, is woman created from the man. It's a completely different plot.
So, okay, ancient texts, weird contradictions, why should any of this matter to us today? Well, it turns out that on one very specific day back in 1968, it suddenly mattered to about 1 billion people all at once.
So picture this. It's Christmas Eve. The whole world is glued to their TVs, watching the Apollo 8 crew do something no human had ever done before, orbit the moon. They're the first people to ever see our planet rise up over the lunar horizon. It's just this incredible, breathtaking moment for science and humanity.
And from that little spaceship, hurtling through the silent cosmos, Commander Frank Borman starts to read the opening lines of Genesis 1, that grand, majestic, cosmic story. That voice from the watery deep being broadcast from the vacuum of space to the biggest TV audience in history.
And this moment, it just perfectly captures the tension. For a lot of people, it was this beautiful moment where faith and science came together, but for others, it was a total collision. Here's this peak of human reason and technology, and it's being paired with a text that, if you read it as a literal science book, seems to contradict everything we know. But here's the thing. The real conflict wasn't between the Bible and science. It was already happening inside the pages of the Bible itself.
And this is where the plot thickens even more, because you think, okay, two stories, that's interesting. But get this, the conversation in the Bible about creation doesn't stop there, not even close. In fact, it's really just getting started. Yep, those first two chapters of Genesis, they're really just the opening act. If you start digging around in other books of the Bible, you find these other totally different takes on creation scattered all over the place. And the variety here is just wild. In the book of Proverbs, creation is told from the perspective of a character called Wisdom, who was there with God like a master craftsman helping build the whole thing. In the book of Job, God gives this whirlwind tour of the cosmos, not to explain how it works, but to show a suffering guy how little he really knows. In the Psalms, they don't talk about creation as a one-time thing that happened long ago, but as something that is happening right now, this dynamic, ongoing process. And this is the absolute key here. These aren't just sloppy retellings. They're not trying and failing to be science textbooks. They are completely different tools designed for different jobs. One is meant to be a poem of praise. Another is there to make you feel a sense of wonder. Another is trying to make sense of suffering. They're asking different questions, so of course they give different answers. So this brings us to this really big, fascinating idea. What if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if all these so-called contradictions aren't a mistake? What if they're not a bug in the system, but the main feature?
The real trick is to stop thinking of the Bible as a single book with one voice. It's not. It's a library. It's this incredible collection of scrolls and texts gathered over hundreds and hundreds of years, preserving all these different voices and perspectives that are often in a direct conversation and sometimes in a heated argument with each other.
And this idea of preserving the debate, it's not a fluke. It is baked into the DNA of the tradition. So, for example, a much later Jewish text called the Mishnah is basically structured like a book of arguments. It'll ask a question like, when should you say the evening prayer? And then it just lists the different conflicting answers from different famous rabbis, right there side by side. It doesn't pick a winner. It just says, here's the conversation, here are the valid points of view.
You see, the point was never to slam the book shut with one single correct answer. No way. The goal was to preserve the conversation itself, to show that there are multiple authentic ways to think about life's biggest questions. By putting contradictory stories right next to each other, the text is inviting you, the reader, not to choose one, but to think about the space between them.
So maybe that's the real takeaway here. Instead of searching these ancient library shelves for a single final answer, what if we embrace them for what they are? A brilliant technology for provoking thought. What if their true genius isn't in the answers they give, but in the profound and timeless questions they force us, even now, to keep asking?